Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
The #1 long-form writer that helps SEOs outrank competition at the click of a button using real-time research and NLP. Start ranking content today with content@scale.ai.
I feel like I just had shade thrown at me. Ahrefs has a lot of issues besides, we do a lot of things besides just disavows. You've probably seen our logo. If you don't know us, it's literally everywhere around everyone's neck. I'm Patrick. We ran a small study, just 375,000 websites. Every one of these used hreflang. We actually ran a bigger study of over 1 million websites we were looking at different issues for. I'm really active in the SEO community. That's all I'm going to say there. This is a quintessential quote. You'll see this in every hreflang article, every international presentation. John Mueller, hreflang is one of the most complex aspects of SEO, if not the most complex one. It's literally required to put these in. Like Hannah said, we found about 2/3 of domains have issues. I actually think that understates the problem. A lot of these were very simplistic sites, like with one hreflang reference just for one page. So any major site, you're going to see tons and tons and tons of hreflang issues. It really is a difficult thing to troubleshoot. It's a difficult thing to get right. Sometimes you may not even care if it is right. I'm going to go through these, but it's just a quick recap of all their issues. 56.3% of domains have pages missing X default annotations. Do I care? Not really. It's not required. You can use it if you want. The way it works, it's most specific match. So it's kind of like a catch-all. They're going to try and match language, country, they're going to match language, and then they're going to match X default. So if you have the more specific ones, don't even really have to worry. 18% of domains have pages missing self-referencing hreflang tags. Do I care? Probably not. They're not actually required. Now, this actually goes way back when people copy and pasted the tags between pages. If you didn't have it then and you copied it to another page, well, it wasn't actually going to work. So it kind of is still a best practice, but it's not required. It'll work fine without it now. Most CMSs, you're going to be fine. This is where you do start to care. 16.9% have hreflang tags referencing redirected or broken pages. Another 15.3% have pages missing reciprocal hreflang tags. Hreflang tags, they work in pairs. So if I've got a UK page, it needs to reference the US page. If I go to the US page, it also needs to reference back to the UK page. They actually form a cluster of pages. This can get really, really complex. By the way, there is one line in this cluster that's actually missing. Good luck finding it. One of the common issues is pages that are blocked with robots.txt. If they can't crawl it, they can't see the hreflang tags on these pages, they're not going to make those connections, they're not going to be able to swap the pages properly. What generally happens, and I think this part is really interesting personally, because this is hreflang playing along with their canonicalization system, their duplicate content detection systems. If you use the exact same page, the exact same content across multiple countries, it's actually going to consolidate all the signals. So all those links, all those various signals, they're going to consolidate to one main version in the index. So a typical Google search, they're going to say, this is the strongest page for that language. We've consolidated these duplicates, and I'm going to get that. That's not always what you see, right? If I'm in the UK and let's say my US page is the strongest one, they have a process they call re-ranking. And so they pull the initial results, and then they run this process, and it's like, oh, this person's actually in the UK. I am going to base the signals on the US page, which is the one that everything consolidated to. I'm going to pull that, but then I'm going to swap it to the right one for the user. I'm going to show them my UK page. That's how that actually works. If they're not duplicate, or if their tags are broken, they're not going to be able to swap properly. If they're not duplicate, they're going to have to use the signals on their own. So if you actually localize a page, you may actually rank worse than if you actually had duplicate pages. Weird, right? Simply because they're going to have to stand on their own signals rather than having combined signals. Again, this is a complex topic. I appreciate y'all not being asleep and snoring. I'm hearing more and more because of this is hard to understand and like difficult to troubleshoot. Lots of SEOs, I say some, but it's lots, are saying you don't need hreflang tags for different languages now. Like it makes sense. Okay, if I got like a US, an Australia page, a British page, I maybe need that so I get them to swap. But what about other languages? There are times where you still need that. For instance, here's Ahrefs in English with English search results. Here's in Spanish with our Spanish results. Title, meta description, still in Spanish. Branded terms are one of the areas where you do want to still have hreflang tags between languages. French, again, French. If I didn't have that, this would probably show in English for me. Okay. When terms are used internationally as well, this is another time where this is going to happen. So link building is a pretty common term across multiple languages. English, Spanish, Spanish, but it's still link building. People still use link building. They actually very rarely will use the Spanish term for that. Link building is the acceptable term. Same in French. So I want my French result, I still have to have hreflang. Otherwise, I'm going to be seeing English results there. 8% of domains have hreflang tags pointing to non-canonical URLs. I mentioned this before, hreflang is a canonicalization signal. There's like 20 different signals. I did a whole presentation. They let me talk about canonicalization up here in the spring. A whole presentation on it. It was fun. One of the things I've found is that typically what is shown in hreflang will actually override the canonical. So I think it's actually a stronger signal than a canonical tag when it's present in a cluster of pages. Another 4.6% of domains have pages with incorrect hreflang values. They're based on a specific, can't think of the name for it, but anyway, they have these ISO codes, they have these lists. You have to go by what's in there for the language and the country specifications. Specifications, that was what I was looking for. One of the common things is using the country code instead of the language code. So using JP instead of JA, using JS instead of JA, that's a typo. JavaScript is a language. It's not one of those supported values I mentioned in those ISO codes. So that's not going to work. Clickers are never my friend. There's also region codes. Lots of people try and use like EU, LA for Latin America. LA is Laos. I don't think there's very many Spanish speakers in Laos, but maybe I'm wrong. I really don't know. 3-letter codes. They don't work. There's a specification for that. It's not what's used for hreflang, so it won't work. This is a fun one, though. EN/UK. Everyone here would probably say that's wrong, right? Technically, it is. It's the wrong code. But it's a specially reserved code. And it actually works. If I see that on a site, I've never said, like, oh, we need to change that. If I change it to ENGB, that's correct, but this doesn't break anything. There used to be a report that showed this. Never saw an issue, ever, with that one. That report's gone, by the way. That sucks. Another 3.2% of domains have pages with inconsistent language attributes. That means we're looking at both the hreflang and the HTML language. They do the same thing. They specify the language of the page, and one says saying like, this is English, another says this is Spanish. Well, one of them is wrong, so you might want to check that. 2.5% of domains have more than one page reference for the same language. So if I got like a EN reference for one page and then EN reference for another page, that's probably wrong. Most common place I see this is they'll have one reference. So hreflang works in multiple locations. You have the head, HTTP headers, and the sitemap. And typically this one, a lot of tools won't catch like differences in the sitemap. So what I'll see is that people have it correct in the head and they're like, oh, it's fine. And then like we'll show like, oh no, like you've got 2 different pages. And they're like, oh, I don't see it. It's in the sitemap, guaranteed. Well, 90% of the time. Another 2.5% of domains have the same page reference for more than one language. So if I'm saying like, this is my page for English, and I'm also saying this is my page for German, or French, or Spanish, it's probably wrong. Can't be all of it. Now, Google has to be very flexible. I learned this working at Ahrefs too. The web is a very messy place. People do things 1,000 different ways. A bajillion different people do everything in every way that's possibly wrong. They have to be very flexible and be able to handle certain things. So like the E and UK example, for instance, enough people got that wrong that they were probably like, all right, like let's just let this go on our end. Like it's fine, that code's reserved. It's not Ukraine, which I've heard before. Ukraine is UA. So they will basically make things work. They will let things slide. I've seen this in some site audits before. They'll flag like you're using an underscore instead of a dash. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. Leave it alone. You don't have to fix it. If you want to put it in your backlog, work on it eventually, put some new dev on it, someone's bored one day, they want to fix it, go for it. But it's not going to make any difference. Relative URLs instead of absolute. Absolute is absolute. It's better. It's safer. Less likely to break things. Relative is going to be fine as long as it works. Now, if you, like, for instance, instead of like /page1, you just put page1, well, you probably just referenced the page incorrectly, and that is going to break things. Some other things to check. Multiple language versions of the same page. On the same page, they don't work. I already kind of mentioned that. Like, you're trying to use French and English and Spanish and blah, 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 all on one page. Google crawls from the US. Whatever you're showing to the US users, well, mostly from the US anyway, whatever you're showing to the US users, which is probably English, that's the version they're going to see. If you're trying to be like, oh, I'll show them like all my Spanish content. Well, not index. Sorry. Not going to be there. Automated redirects, generally a bad idea. There's usually some logic around this. I will say there's one exception to this that I actually mentioned this in my panel earlier. There is a setup that uses 302 redirects on the homepage. So like I land on the main domain and then I go to like a country version or a specific language version based on a bunch of logic. That is an approved setup. There's a blog post from like 2014 from Google. I think it's like choosing the right homepage for your international business. People don't like 302s, SEOs especially. Another thing that I think people have issues understanding how it works. So they always want to change that, and I'm like, no, I've implemented some of these original setups. They've been live for almost a decade now, never caused any issues. Leave it alone, please. If you are doing it, if you're trying to detect, what I would do instead is like let them land where they're going to land. And then say like, hey, we think you're actually here. Do you want to change it? And then set a cookie. And now that's set for them, and they'll go back there eventually. So setting a cookie after the fact, fine. But you have to be careful with this too, because some of those pop-ups are really, really big. They're like, choose your version, blah, 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 and it's like a whole map and takes up the whole screen. That's an interstitial, that's not great. Encoded characters. These usually work fine for Google. So %20, that's a space. Lots of different encoded characters can be inside URLs. Luckily, we do that a lot less than we used to. Google's going to be fine with those. I've seen this break lots of sites, though. Could be a database that doesn't support it, some other part of your tech stack. It can break things. So try not to use special characters in your URLs, just because it's more risky. You really might break some things. Another fun one, hreflang tags have to be in the head section. So basic HTML structure, you've got a head section, you've got a body section. In this case, they're actually in the body, because the head can break at times. Sometimes it's because a tag didn't close, you put some tags that are supposed to be in the body in there, and what happens is browsers will actually close the head section early, and then they're like, now that's in the body. Well, hreflang won't work in the body. That's actually, that would be very, very bad if it did. I'll throw a fun fact around that, actually. hreflang, one of the only bug bounties Google ever paid was to a guy actually from England, Tom Anthony. And it was an hreflang exploit. And he basically became the international version of another website using this exploit. It swapped to his version on a site that he did not own. So if they allowed this in the body, you could just kind of do that to other people's websites. Not a good thing. No index the pages. They're not going to be able to see the tags. They're not going to be able to swap them. How do you troubleshoot these now that these are gone? This report was like the source of truth from Google, and they're just like, we don't need that anymore. SEOs will be fine. People don't need to see these issues. Traditional site audits, run a scheduled crawl once a week, once a month, however you do it. Tons of auditors out there. Not all of them are actually very good at catching hreflang issues. They don't always look at all the places that they should look for these issues. It's constant crawlers with like an alert system. So it's constantly crawling, send you an alert if they realize like, hey, this changed. Why did this change? hreflang breaks all the time. I don't understand why or how, but it goes wrong 1,000 different ways. Suddenly tags will be blank, tags will be missing. Stuff just makes it from the dev environment to live. Stuff that like doesn't even show up, that should never show up, manages to show up. I really don't understand how it can go wrong in so many different ways. But once they're broken, like it takes a while to recrawl, reestablish those connections. People yell at you. It's not fun. Then there's a regression test. So this is more like developer territory. You can ask the guy from Lemon Hive. I'm sure he sets a lot of these up. Talk to your devs, though. Basically, they're trying to catch anything before you launch it live. We also have a new report in our site audit that this is fun. This first of its kind, we have an hreflang visualization. We'll show you if something's wrong within the cluster, within every hreflang cluster. And we have a table view that says, like, this is what's broken, where it's broken. So we're looking header, sitemap, cross-domain. We'll tell you exactly where we saw it and which ones are broken. So that makes this I think is the first time like people will understand like what is actually broken, because those like Excel spreadsheet reports, very difficult to understand. I'm super excited about this. I announced it yesterday. We launched it. I couldn't even wait for the presentation. I didn't know if we would make it in time, but we did. What's fun is even if you do everything properly, which Nike really, they do a good job. I looked at their implementation. I didn't find any errors. They're getting a lot of traffic outside. This is Nike's Spanish page, ES for Spain. They have pages for a lot of these other countries, but their page for Spain is actually showing in a lot of these other countries. So even though they did everything right, Google didn't swap them. What more can you do? hreflang is not the best system, but I don't know that there's a better system. We'll see. Apparently Bing has something in the works there. We'll see what they got. But you did everything right, page showed in the wrong location. That sucks. And it really is a case of like, what can you do? And as a tech SEO, I'm like, sorry. This is what I would do. There's nothing if you've already done it. Nothing you can do about it. But if you're planning this, just do one page per language. One English page, one French page. Not a French page in Canada, a French page in France. Because now you're going to have that issue where, yeah, they're going to try and swap them. It's not guaranteed. But if you only have one version, more than likely they're going to get it right. Or at least they're going to get it right more often than they do now. So you still, if you want to have specific content for another country, you can do dynamic personalization. So detect that person based on that logic, based on their IP, their browser settings, blah, 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 and then swap that content. Say, like, this is my local content, change the currency, whatever you're going to do, but do it with dynamic personalization. Still only have one page per language. That's all I got. Thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.